Hello, everyone. You are in the second episode of our podcast for Gen Z Among the Ruins. I'm Porter.
Yes. I'm Zach.
And in this episode, we will sort of be addressing some of the issues we missed in the first one, particularly concerning the more cultural factors that lead to the difficult situation for our generation.
Absolutely. There are definitely some things that we want to head up before we go into the today's topics as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So first off, how have you been?
I've been trying some new things. A lot of changes I've been trying. Gosh, I love wine so much. Yeah. I also just discovered that like all my suits are all too small for me. Man, I've gained a. It's just funny how I think this is different in different cultures and maybe even like genetics, but I find it interesting that I gained all my weight within the past 6 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that'll happen. Yeah. And is it where is it too small? Is it around the shoulders?
It's actually hugging my forearms, my biceps, and then also on my shoulders. Yeah, it's very tight.
Yep, the gym will do that. When you like actually get to building up, you'll feel it around there. I have the same problem with some of my stuff too.
Yeah, I guess that's just par for the course as well. That's why I like the baggy pants a lot. I really do. And I've done a lot of I've done a lot of changes as well, and I'm gonna continue to do that. Probably as this journey continues on. I feel healthier. I feel less tired since the last episode, which is nice.
It's good.
Yeah, good stuff there. And also from the last episode, I did some looking at some China news and statistics as well.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to get into this.
And definitely. And I'm starting to really get into, or at least understand economics a little bit more. But thankfully, it's just going to get better as time goes on.
Right.
Yeah. And you've been reading a lot lately, right?
I would say so. Yes. It's been a lot of things. Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler, Ion by Carl Jung, Suicidal Empathy by Gad Sad, and A Camp of Saints by Jean Raspail. I was reading Ion last night, and it's very interesting. I would love to hear like a credentialed psychology professor or whatever, like, oh, I should read Carl Jung because he's one of the fathers of depth psychology. I bet he talks all about like what's good for the psyche and how to do effective therapy and everything. And then they open the book, and then Carl Jung is just like, the Antichrist is coming in the 33rd century. Here's the astrology that I used to prove it. Source: it is in the stars.
It's in the stars. It's always in the stars, right?
So he had this extremely in-depth analysis where he's using this medieval manuscript that's written in Latin to basically explain how different religions have certain conjugations between the signs and how those correspond to specific dates, and he explains how the Antichrist and his religion are the conjugation of Jupiter and the moon, and how that conjugation will happen 3,200 something, and how he predicts
3,200. Holy shit! This is really far in the future. That's really far.
It is Carl Jung's most schizo and based book, but probably the most interesting. If your only experience is the one that he's well known for. I can't remember all of a sudden, but if you only know introduction level Carl Jung and then you read this one, it's quite a jump. It's all astrology and alchemy and the occult just tied into psychology.
Well, I would definitely want to read Carl Jung because I remember taking an AP psychology class in high school, and the psychologist I liked the most consistently was Carl Jung, even though that we talked about Freud like I think like a dozen times in the class for over a year, and it's very weird why. In high school, they talk about Freud a lot, but they don't talk enough about Carl Jung. And it's very sad because Carl Jung has a lot of good, in-depth psychology that you can apply in your real life to actually improve yourself. And I don't know if that's done deliberately or
It's
the
deliberate.
actual deliberate. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes a lot more
the
sense.
system hates him. So they like Sigmund Freud, but don't like to admit it because they don't like some of the things he talks about. But secretly they like him, and the reason for that is because he is, and Jung talks about this. That part of his falling out with Freud was because he just obsessively hated Christianity and hated religion. And it was just to an irrational degree, and it bothered Jung more over time. And they don't like Jung because he talks about the fact that religion and science shouldn't be enemies and they should be joined together. And because he's a Christian, and because he's, I should also add, because of his esoteric practices, they don't like that sort of thing being brought in academic spaces, and they hate Christianity and they hate religion. So, they push him out. I'm reminded of Rudyard's text wall that he had about why they love Freud but they hate Jung.
Yeah, I should look up, or at least bring up the topic on that, like a very far in the future with this podcast, and look at historically at what point in time did religion and the sciences start to actually separate. I have a feeling that it happened directly after the Reformation, which is just a
Yes.
vague understanding of it.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay,
I would say so
spot on.
too.
It.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole here today because it would be a very
Obviously.
explanation.
Yeah, well, that'll have to be saved because we have other topics to talk about. And we're getting off the reservation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I do want to delve into the history of that because a lot of problems stem from the deliberate separation of the church and the sciences when it never was like that. And the reason why there was such tension between religion and the sciences is because of the politics of that time, and it just accelerated that.
And you
can see that in
somewhere in the 1500s. So
yeah, and it's not exactly easy to understand church politics, especially in the Catholic Church, unless you're like in the Catholic Church. I'll have to look at the historical records because I'm not really a Catholic, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. But yeah, the topics that we have are more towards what's happening right now, correct, with the work culture.
Right, that's really the first thing that we'll get into here, and so I believe that our culture with work is very abnormal, and it actually has some relevance to what we were just talking about. So somewhere around the Protestant Reformation, the shift focused from fighting to works. The emphasis became shifted away from the nobility, from the fighter, to the worker. And you see this with the Calvinists. The grandchildren of the Calvinists are all atheists, mind you. But the mindset of just do what you normally do, and just say that the things you're doing are for God. That was the emphasis on works in a simplistic sense. I don't mean to overgeneralize here, and that was the result. Was this almost toxic work culture. And you look at us compared to Europe, we have so few days off. It's hard to take off of work even for very simple things. And though I would say we're not the worst, the Far East definitely has that us beat for a myriad of reasons, particularly just because of the nature of Western individualism. We will tolerate a lot more than they will, and history has proven that. Whether it's Japan or China or Korea or Oceania, it doesn't matter. People over there will put up with a lot more. And so what they do there would never fly here. So I'm not really concerned of ending up just like them, but I think it is a very great precautionary tale for what is the reductio ad absurdum, as Nietzsche would say. What is the, like, you take this idea to its furthest, most absurd extent. What does this look like? And so, like, in and I'll start with my bit here with Japan, because I know you have a lot to say about China, and I'm very excited to hear that. With Japan, you have a 6-day work week. You have culturally mandated unpaid overtime. Essentially, they work until it's done. From what I understand, it is starting to change, which would be nice. But they work until the work is done, essentially, in these sorts of blue collar or white collar office jobs. And if it goes past the time that work is supposed to be done, oh well, you have to keep working or everyone's going to shame you. And if you're shamed in a collectivist society like that, that's worse than death. And I mean, that's why you see death is chosen as a response to shame in that very same society in the past. And so the result is just an immense amount of time spent at work. And there are very conscientious people, very punctual, very reliable people, but it's meshed with the work culture to make this such extreme obsession with work that is unfounded in the pre-industrial world. People didn't work like that in the past. And this is going to be a strange example to give here, but the anime, The Helpful Fox Senko-san, explains this perfectly. and I feel weird for pointing to something like this as the example, but it is. You watch it and you think it's going to be this nice comfort anime, and it is, but also it is a scathing criticism of Japanese work culture and just how bad it is, and from the lens of someone who's from like the medieval era, seeing what's happening and being so confused as to why they're doing all of that, why they're hurting themselves like that. And so I thought it was a very great explanation of just the life they live in. And then I would also add, after that, then they have to there's socially obligated drinking until you pass out, which we saw a little bit of in the Navy, and it's almost indicative of a greater problem. If you're seeing people drink that much in such an unhealthy quantity, it really says they want to escape from life. And why would you want to escape from life so bad? It really is indicative of cultural problems. Yeah,
it's been so inundated with so much work and so much hours and very little free time that it's you could call it in the workplace, you call it soul crushing. I think that's a phrase that people do use.
Yes,
definitely. And there are some economics about productivity and the balance that's achieved. I'll definitely compare the U.S. Because even though, despite that, we don't have as much, work days off, even by law, like in Arizona, that I know, like you are mandated like 7 days of free time, or I say vacation time. Literally just 7 days in the week. I'm sorry, not in the week, in the entire year. But I know for a fact that companies actually do allow more vacation time than what is legally mandated in Arizona.
right.
Hopefully that does.
That's a good sign from our culture. And I should
Mhm.
also, one thing I forgot to mention here, the suicide rate is indicative of this. You talked about how there's a kind of diminishing return on increasing the productivity. Like you increase the hours to such a point and you start losing productivity. You start losing it so much that people die. The
Yeah.
it Japan has, if I recall correctly, one of the worst in the world per capita, which we'll pull up here. But
Yeah,
anyways, what you were
I
saying?
wouldn't say it's not the worst. I'll have to say that probably goes to China, just in just the sheer amount of productivity that isn't even actually able to actually materialize in any real benefit. The thing that Japan has going for it is because they were able to industrialize first before China or South Korea, and they got that from America. They got that industrialization from opening up trade with America. That's one of the beginning seeds that comes from it. It's not the only seeds because the Dutch is, I believe, the ones that gave them guns. But I could be wrong on that. But I think
I can't
that's
remember,
one of
but
the
that
reasons that
might
they,
be.
yeah, that might be because I do remember Dutch merchants being one of the most prolific merchants in history, other than the British. And there's so much history with Europeans spreading their technology, but um, diminishing returns, I think, is much worse in China, just by not only sheer population that they have, but also the technology that they use and or copied and stolen from the United States. It's not very efficient at all, and because they use that slave labor to produce the most amount of product at the lowest common denominator, they're not actually developing their actual economy.
Right.
They, yeah, their economic state is based off of production and selling that to the rest of the world instead of having a commercial economy or a developed economy such as Europe or the United States, which is the strongest consumer market ever in history, um, which comes from the British culture, which used to be, or I should say, the Great Britain, which used to be the greatest consumer market in history. And what
And
comes from,
also,
yeah.
I would say it's reminiscent. What you're describing is reminiscent of the Soviet Union trying to implement American-style farming. If you're familiar with that, where they saw the big farms that Americans were on, and then well, I mean, as you know, they forcefully ripped a bunch of people from their land, and then
Yeah,
they
that happened in
shoved people
Ukraine.
onto exactly. And that's kind of the era I'm talking about, is the Stalinist era. They put them on these massive farms and then expected them to just work the way Americans do, and they also didn't have the American technology. And so it worked horribly, and they all starved, as we all know.
Yeah, because no
Um,
one knew how to do their fucking jobs.
right.
Excuse my language,
It
but like
worked
no
in
one
theory.
understand how it actually worked.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's the problem with these people is they see something that works in their head, and then that's the end of the discussion. There is never a, well, does this actually work in reality?
Exactly, and productivity is you can really go into depth in just productivity, just straight numbers. But the reason why our productivity is so high in America compared to any other country is due to technology. Technology is the best way to improve your productivity without sacrificing your workers, which is I think probably not one of the reasons why our government's investing so much in AI, but AI would definitely be a huge game changer just in productivity alone, which is why they're investing so much in it. Because once AI becomes so prevalent in American society, we will actually be able to go into space a lot easier and much cheaper than any other country. And we'll be so far ahead that it'll be very hard for any other country to actually catch up. And the reason, probably not the reason why out loud, but probably instinctively, that other Asian countries want to catch up to their European peers and definitely America. But they have to sacrifice so much of their life to eat, and they're not even close to the productivity that we're even to able to produce with our 9 to 5, and then some of us work 5 days a week, 4 days a week, sometimes even 6 days a week, but that's very rare in American culture. Some people work every day, but that's also rare, and they have very like weekly intervals, and they have like a week off. There's very different ways that Americans work, and it's not always soul crushing, and that's why we're able to have that productivity because of the built-in innovation that we have with our companies and also our culture, because we're constantly trying to find new and better ways to make work easier for us and then still do more work on top of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in hearing what else you have on China, because I know we were discussing what's happened with their dams and other infrastructure like that. Would you mind?
Yeah, that's recent news. So, statistically, they have around like more than 90,000 dams across the country. And a lot of those are earthwork dams, and it's the easiest dams to make. A lot of the world uses them because it's very cheap to actually make, and it's very easy to like actually follow the instructions and make them well. The thing with dams like that, you eventually have to do maintenance and actually replace. So within, I think one of the statistics was between 30 to 50 years. I could be wrong on that because I'm not a civil engineer, but and completely understand how it works. But that's one of the easiest dams to make, and if you don't like replace those dams or keep up maintenance, they will catastrophically fail. And with the extreme weather that China has been experiencing within recent years, a lot of their dams are failing. Their infrastructure is very old and archaic, so a lot of their actual sewer system is probably even 100 years behind our American standards for plumbing. Because with the thing with very old empires, is because when you want to replace infrastructure, it's very expensive because there's a lot of old infrastructure that's been working for centuries and eventually needs to be replaced. Japan, I would say, is the best at doing that by far because
And their culture definitely is a factor there. To speak again about their some of their history here. We watched as the Far East was just getting completely destroyed by Western powers. Japan has this unique ability to adapt, to see something new and change to fit it. It's a kind of cultural malleability, and so what happened was Japan modernized before everyone else, and then the Russians, just like all the other European powers, said, "Okay, we're going to force ourselves against the Far East," and then they lost the Russo-Japanese War. The Japanese won that conflict because they were better prepared to fight it, and it's sort of like you've probably noticed this too. Look at Japan 20 years ago. They act like Europe. They act like we hate America. We rely on them entirely for our protection, but we hate America. And then they militarized, and all of a sudden they're like our best friends and they love us. Have you noticed that?
So the thing with I think at a point that has been true, and definitely during their economic rise when they really wanted to compete with America in GDP terms, there was a point in the late 1900s, I believe it was between the 70s and 80s, that Japan was in a very high economic boom that's been consistent for a decade. And at one point, some economics said that Japan might have could have overtaken the United States. Obviously, that didn't happen at all, and Japan has now the lost 2 decades. That's very well documented.
Didn't they have a big economic crash somewhere around there, like the 90s?
They had it in the 90s, yes. They had it in the 90s, and it was thankfully us Americans haven't experienced something as crippling like that. The only time when we have experienced something that crippling was the Great Depression, and even then we weren't in the Great Depression for very long, in comparison. Yeah, and it's very interesting how that happens. I don't have all the details, and I'm kind of blanking on exactly how it happened, but eventually there came to a breaking point with how much productivity they were doing and how many companies they're making at the same time. Eventually, they just ran out of steam. Literally, they ran out. They eventually ran out of steam and investment that they couldn't actually push it further anymore as they already were. They were going way too fast for their economic boom because it was so heavily invested, and then eventually the debt came due, and everything started crashing down. Which is why their currency has never caught up to the West at all whatsoever. Not only that, but their debt to GDP ratio is around 240% of their actual GDP as a whole. So they're in a much worse position debt to GDP ratio than America. But the reason why their economy had
ensnared by wokeism, though.
No, it's not. But they have been in such a precarious economic positions because of that debt to GDP ratio, and knowing that, but all of that is being propped up by other countries just waiting on Japan to actually to pay those, because a lot of their economy now runs on debt and bonds. Basically, other people buying the bonds.
Right.
Just me.
What about so? Do you think China might be on the verge of some kind of societal collapse, something like that, civil war, or something like that?
There are a lot of signs, and other channels definitely explain it. And right now, we're going to explain right now, at least from our perspective as well, that China, just like with Japan, following the exact same footsteps economically with their economic boom, like 10% GDP growth like every single year, and they've been pushing that. How they actually fund that is just debt. It really is just, most of it is just debt. And a lot of rich people who probably could explain this better than I, but a lot of actual financing is debt and not actual cash that they have on hand.
Right,
and that's the same thing with China.
Peter Zeihan comes to mind, where it was. I still haven't looked at it, but it's something like like they have 5 times the inflation bubble that the U.S. has, because they just use debt for everything.
Yeah, and it's because of their very convoluted structure on how they actually accrue taxes, because they very much screw over the local governments, because the local governments don't really get that much taxes. The CCP does, the actual overarching government that they do. The best ways that their local governments actually accrue funding and actually fund all their programs is through construction, which is why they were just endlessly just constructing until the sun rises, which is why you have a bunch of high-speed rail everywhere, because they needed to be constantly building, because it was one of the main reasons why they could put for sure their GDP was actually growing.
Or when they got that grant to build the electric cars, but not to actually sell them. And so they just made the gigantic lots full of electric cars that just sit there and rot.
Yeah, because like they have like hundreds of companies that build electrical vehicles, but only like 18% of them are even profitable. And then the rest of them are out there breaking even or going under. And that's the problem, is because China is trying to try multiple strategies with technology, with the technology sector, because they're trying to keep up. Well, they're trying to catch up to the United States. Even though they stole a whole bunch of technology, they're nowhere near have the know-how, the capability, the productivity, or even the generational understanding of how it even works. and that's a
Right.
problem. That's the huge problem when you're trying to do catch up.
And they
And
claim to be communist, but their economy is closer to World War II era Germany.
yes, it's very close to fascist because they still can seize the means of production, but they allow capitalism to flourish with specific people and try to allow freely, but with quotations.
Right. It's more like
Because
a
they
command
say
economy.
it's very it's run more now a command economy because of Xi Jinping and his decisions. The main guy who allowed capitalism to at least flourish was Dao Jinping. I forgot his name completely wrong, but it was
I'll try and
I'll
flash it on
eventually
the screen.
remember the name. Yeah, because he's the forefather of opening up the Chinese markets to actually try to compete with the West, and then another guy comes in as well. He's been a huge rival with Xi Jinping since forever, and he's now dead. He's been dead since I think 2021. I could be wrong on that. I'll also try to remember. I'm bad with names, but we'll flash the names up when they come up. But it's primarily those two that allowed capitalism to, quote unquote, flourish as they did, to allow normal Chinese folk to actually try to bring themselves out of poverty, and that's also heavily skewed because most of Chinese economy, at least 20%, is still agriculture, and they don't have enough. Yeah, and the funny thing is that they can't feed themselves even with that amount of agriculture.
Which
they
is
just
shocking.
can't.
Yeah.
It is very shocking because there's even a statistic where Mississippi, our poorest state, compared to their poorest state, actually produces 2 times more food than they do, and and for Mississippi's GDP, that's only 3%, and we produce more food than their poorest province, and that's 21% of their economy for GDP. Absolutely staggering. They're still a developing country by far, and this will have to be a very big topic very later on, but there's a lot of teething problems with the Industrial Revolution and actually gradually understanding it and all that knowledge, which is, I think, why a lot of developing countries actually struggle, because there's not enough time for them to actually learn and understand the actual revolution that comes with it, understanding using it productively and well enough to actually benefit their people. Because right now it's more of they're getting like bits and pieces, like with Legos. They're assembling it according to the instructions, but they don't fully understand what they can really do with it. One of the developing countries that really understands what they're doing with it is like Saudi Arabia, Japan, obviously, South Korea does as well. They have a very weird way of having that actually work. Some South American countries are starting to really develop as well. It took a while, just due to colonial teethings, especially with nobility. That takes a very long time, but they're starting to really start to actually industrialize properly now in this coming age.
Right. So I think I want to, from here, start moving on to more of the other cultural causes and sort of the value systems that lead themselves to the position we're in now. But before that, I'd like to take a break here for a few minutes, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
All right. So we will be back in just a second. Reload! And we are back.
Hello.
We have an unexpected visitor, but anyways.
Oh, yes, the cat in the background.
Right. So what's that wine you're drinking?
Oh, this wine. I really love wine, to be quite honest. Usually my favorite wines locations are in Spain, California, and then Italy.
Okay.
I like Spain the most because uh, their fruits. I'm not too sure what's in their soil, but it's very thick and very rich. That's why I like Spanish wine. I should visit Spain at some point. But this wine is a Castillero del Diablo. I've definitely butchered that, but it's a Carmenet from Chile.
Okay.
And Chile, like South American wine, isn't always that good, but this one is very good. I love it. Mainly because like you can taste the berry, and then in the middle part, the actual alcohol spikes and then it falls, and so you get a very so you get a nice beginning, a very a hit in the middle, and then it tapers down towards the end with the aftertaste.
Okay,
it's very interesting.
That sounds a bit like the mead that I make too. That's a lot of times how mead turns out.
Yeah, and it's probably just from like similar berries.
Yeah,
as well.
And I think if you make it, because mead is also a wine, when you make it strong enough and in a certain way, I would think that's how the flavor profile works. Essentially, is you have like the main flavor and then the alcohol and then the aftertaste.
Yeah, I mean, usually it follows those general rules, but each wine is very different, especially from how much wine I've tasted. There's actually a difference in the location where the wine actually comes from, because California wine, if you ever get the chance to actually taste different wines from different locations, California wine to me is very much more sweeter than other wines. Yeah, I don't know, it's probably the soil in California, but the wines there, for whatever reason, sweeter than in other countries. And because I just tasted Spanish wine a lot, the Spanish wine is a lot richer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's heavier, which is why I like in wines. Yeah, but any wine connoisseurs definitely put in the comments what kind of wines you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we transition into our other topic, a lot of this information I got from observation, I should say, and from the book I like reading, which is Why Nations Fall by Duran Akimagu and James A. Robinson. I definitely butchered that other one, but yeah, definitely read that book if you guys get the chance, because it really helps conceptualize why we're in the economic systems we're in currently. And culture is a big factor in what drives economics as well, more so than people would actually think. It's not just the institutions, but it's also the culture as well, and who is in charge or has been in charge for so long. And with Asian cultures, saving face is a huge part. Definitely. In Asian cultures.
And that's all of those things I mentioned with Japanese culture. That's what it was, is you're forced into all those shitty positions to save face.
Yeah, and the thing with that is that when you save face, try to promote image more than actual just innovation and productivity, you will lose a lot of progress than you otherwise would have thought. It's more of a detriment than an actual positive. And I know that a lot of people definitely in social media save face a lot. You can see that
I would argue that a lot of wokeism is that, and corporate culture and DEI culture and all of that is a matter of like trying to do things in a performative way, but not actually doing them. Shifting the focus onto how you look. I I'd love to find it. The statistic on the amount of psychopaths in the nursing profession, because they spend so much effort trying to show everyone how nice they are, but they're evil people.
That
We saw
that
the
is
evil
indeed
nurses
a
during
problem.
COVID. We all know what we're talking about here.
It's so bad. I think our generation has been so it's been hit with so many problems at the same time. Is that it's very hard to recover, and saving face is a bad cultural trait that, in my opinion, we should never ever adopt, because you lose the authenticity that everybody's craving now today.
And it's so poorly suited to Western man, in my opinion. You know, all of the things we're built off of were results rather than words. Like, you know, our founding myth is the Indo-Europeans riding their chariots into Europe. They didn't do that by talking. No, they did that by slaughtering villages. You know, they did that through action, not through words. And they continued that tradition. Whether you're reading the Iliad or you're reading the Norse sagas, the story is still the same of people performing actions, and that's the thing that we value, not the words.
Yeah, and the fact that our culture is more performative from that saving face, social media gives more power to that than actual works, because it's
Yeah.
hard to really show works when you're looking at a screen. It's hard to like actually imagine it, especially with AI and how people like to cover all their blotches and imperfections on social media. It makes it very hard for people to actually believe you, which is a very huge problem for the Western culture.
Right, and I
And
think that. Sorry, go on. I think this would segue well into a certain topic, but I want to hear the rest of what you have to say here.
oh, okay. The And because of that, you see so many people tear each other down, is because you have this competition of saving face, which is, you can see that in Asian cultures. You could, and now you can see that very much well in social media, which is why it's such
Right.
a cesspool, because it's very much disgusting, alien to our Western minds. It's something that we should absolutely reject.
Yeah. Right, and so to segue into that topic here, the Jonathan Haidt has a great amount of research on this, and this is kind of one of the core theses of this video is the loneliness epidemic and the anxiety and depression epidemic of Gen Z. And in the case of women particularly, and Jonathan Haidt has the research which backs up the fact that it is particularly women, are affected by social media. And you'll see these studies that have a little bit of selection bias that will just say, no, screens don't have a large impact on overall mental health. Screens. Yes, screens don't themselves, but the things you have on them do. And for women, having social media in the form that we have it now and the way we do it now has created these sorts of competition games, these crabs in the bucket games that they play with each other, in which they're given a very altered version of reality, cherry-picked version of reality from other people, and then they take that and they run with it. And you can also... So people will... And this is coming from Jonathan Haidt as well. People will try and claim that well, let me backtrack actually. So around 2012, there's like a hockey stick in the graph of depression and anxiety among teenagers, well, people in general, but you can actually specifically point out that it's not the millennials doing it, it's Gen Z, starting at 2012. And then people will try and say, well, maybe that's just because we've removed the taboos associated with it, and so people are more willing to express that they feel depressed. But that's not the case, because when you look at the rates of self-harm, they have skyrocketed. That's not because of a lack of reporting before. They're clearly measurably less happy now, particularly in women, particularly in that following along perfectly with the rise of social media in the form we have it. 2012 was when the iPhone started to gain popularity. That was when the like button started to be a new thing. It was when social media formed into what it currently is. And so
Yeah,
I think that is the flea that carries the psychological Black Death for women, is the social media antics and the competitive games and the performative nature of it all, which is very toxic to our culture, and we need to find a solution to it.
yeah, and it's very performative. It's very easy to do that, especially with anonymity. When you have
Right.
anonymity, you can perform whatever you really want. And
Right.
that's both that's the two-edged sword of the internet. You can do that,
And just
and
like
it's
the
a double-edged.
Industrial Revolution, like you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
instituting new technologies is hard because you have to grasp all the ways to make it function well in your society. There's a big learning curve with it, kind of like what you mentioned.
Yeah.
And when you look at, say, the Industrial Revolution right after it started, when people were working like 18-hour days, that was ridiculous. It took us some time to figure out how to not do that.
Yeah, and a lot of kids, women, and men died
Right.
in those machine grinders to eventually get out of that state, because a lot of
And
rich
that gave us the
rich merchants.
Anti-Defamation League, but that's besides the point.
It did. There are good reasons for why that happened, and now it's completely like off the reservation of
Yeah,
what
it
its
had to do
original
with things that
purpose
I can't say
was.
on YouTube, but go on.
Yeah, it went completely off the reservation, which is what happened with a lot of institutions when they um, solve their purpose and have no other reason to really exist and don't know what to really do with themselves. It's like when you complete your life goal, you complete it, and now you don't know what else to do with your life. It's very much like that, and then they just perpetuate, the very thing they were made to like actually solve because it keeps them in business.
And that's one of the
Um,
dilemmas of comfort too, is the equilibrium that it creates. Is when people aren't challenged, it causes them to, not be as well adapted. And so along with this, we mentioned a little bit in the previous episode, the epidemic of helicopter parenting and the amount of Gen X, largely parents who said, um, who basically said, you know what, we can't see the consequences of this. We're not going to think ahead. Here's how we're going to raise our kid, which is never let them out of our sight, never let them develop, never let them learn things on their own. And something else that Haidt talks about is this sort of incompetence problem that educators and people like that are reporting about Gen Z, where it's like, they principals are reporting that, like, they'll have students who have never operated a hammer before, or in a home ec class, and they're like 13 or 14, they've never used an oven. Because safetyism has separated them so much from anything that could be harmful in any way at all, that they haven't gotten to grow up. They haven't gotten to accept any kind of risk and learn how to manage risk in their life, because it's been done for them by their parents. Which, as I mentioned, is just a terrible. It borders on abuse, because the kid can't choose that. And they're held back for life because of that thing that they couldn't control, that their parents did because it was trendy at the time and they didn't think ahead.
And it's not all parents, but it's such a massive effect with, I think, definitely young Gen Z. We're a little bit older Gen Z, but definitely for younger Gen Z, it's definitely prevalent, way more prevalent.
I had friends who
for
had
sure.
That. I saw it. I got a very small taste of it myself, not not too bad, but I knew people who were definitely in that. And along with that, ever notice how the kid with peanut allergies has the helicopter parent?
It's very funny how,
It's
yeah,
anecdotal,
it
but it's
works every
pretty much
time. It
true.
works every
And there's
time.
actually there are actually studies to back that up. So again, to go to Jonathan Haidt's research, there was a study in which he explained where essentially they had done this, where they had some parents of children who are susceptible to having the peanut allergy to not give them any peanuts as the control, and then you have parents who are told to give their children a snack with peanut dust on it, and they did that. And what they found is that it was, if I recall correctly, it was something like around 20% or so of the kids would end up with a peanut allergy. And then it was way smaller if they were just exposed to peanuts in some small amount, because we are anti-fragile. We get stronger when we face difficult experiences. And another one with the they were creating this biosphere. I want to say it was actually in your state. It was in Arizona, where they were creating this biosphere for certain scientific testing, and they needed these trees to grow there for this biosphere. There were these jungle trees specifically, and so they planted these trees, and they grew up, and then they all flattened. They all folded, and they couldn't understand why at first. And then they realized these trees actually need wind, like monsoon wind and stuff like that, to learn how to stand up on their own.
Yes.
As living things, they literally will just lay flat and useless if they don't have the wind blowing them. They need that challenge and adversity to grow, even in fucking trees. You know, it's just a principle of existence, is that life is struggle, and you must struggle against those things to get better at facing that struggle.
Yeah, and going piggybacking off of that as well. So there is a tree in the front yard, and at the very beginning, it was propped up with stilts and like a metal chain around the actual trunk for about, at least, I think, maybe like 3 years, and then it was done with. And now the tree was able to like actually face adversity and learn how to actually stay upright against the winds, and now it's just a massive tree that's now causing problems because it's just so massive. Like it looks and bends weird, but because it has faced so much adversity over the past I think almost 20 fucking years now, that it's strong enough to actually stand up on its own. And that's one of the problems with some workplaces, and some of the frustrations that I felt when I was in the service. It's just that the safety and the bureaucracy was so overbearing, or it was, at least for me, was very hard to like actually learn.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we've discussed at length the problems with bureaucracy. And I think kind of where a lot of this ties together, where, you know, whether it's the parenting strategy or the government strategy, it is all connected. Because, well, for one, you raise kids to be dependent on going to an adult anytime they have a conflict among their friends. Well, they grow up to do that. And then they call the police every time someone makes them feel uncomfortable. Or they tell HR because a guy made them, or because they thought a guy was creepy for speaking to them. You know, things like that. And
absolutely boggles the mind.
Yeah, that, you know, it's almost like raising authoritarian kids makes authoritarian adults who want the government to do everything for them. It's almost
amazing
like that's
how
a
that
bad
works.
idea, right?
It's almost like it's part of the plan.
Yeah, almost like it is. and to go along with that, I mentioned earlier, you have the combination of overworked plus excess. Feast and misrule, if you will. And I think that I can't remember who it was. Amusing ourselves to death really explains this well with the way that that what Sam Francis would call a soft regime, which is like our version of the managerial elite versus, say, the Soviet Union or World War II Germany. It lends itself much less. Well, it's starting to change now. Much less to 1984, and far closer to Brave New World. I would argue Brave New World is worse because everyone wants to be there. The culture has taught people to want to live like children, to not have families, to everyone belongs to everyone. Which is just, 1984, at least it is largely coercion that holds down dissent. In Brave New World, there is no dissent. It is simply a matter of have your comforts, have your pleasure, work just the right amount so that you don't become a problem to society, work bullshit jobs that have no meaning because we just need to keep you busy so you're not a problem, and then take your soma and take your monthly aggression pill, and then just
take your pills.
Yeah, and live like children forever. Live like children until you die. Brave New World just is probably, well, aside from A Camp of Saints, one of the most terrifying dystopian novels that I've ever read. Especially because you have this, they called him an Indian. He kind of is, kind of not really. But essentially, they have like a zoo of people who are not part of that society, who don't live in this comfort world, this pleasure world. And they, and someone comes from that. John
zoo?
Savage. Yeah, he comes back from that zoo to see this society. And he brings his mom with him because his mom was from that society. He thought this is what she wants. And then they realize she's old. And because she's old and it terrifies them, they have to, first they lock her up in a hospital, and then they just decide that that she needs to be put down because she's a danger to society for being old, for not living like adult children. And so then they and so then they get rid of her, as they decide they should, because she exists and she looks old. But it's all very fascinating because you have John the Savage, and the other main character, I can't recall his name. They're like, they just see this society around them going insane, people behaving like children and trying to get them to act like adults, and they just won't. And then John decides he's had enough of it, and he goes to live alone in his little tower. And then he becomes the exhibit. People come to just look at him, to just stare at him, because it's just such a profound thing. And, there's, obviously it's not literally true, but in a semantic sense, it is true. With this forming, with the term I coined, the idiocracy class. The forming class of just living for pleasure and nothing else. You see them doing that, and I've seen people convert away from it and be so much happier without it, and that's how it is. That the red pill thing is very, very true. Is when you can come away from the meaningless comfort, the meaningless pleasure, and seek things more valuable, and then throw in there some comfort that does have value. Of sitting down at your couch, reading a book in a comfortable home. That's proper comfort. That's like how Frodo would have understood comfort. I try to run things by the Frodo test. If it would pass in the Shire, then I think that it's an acceptable form of comfort.
That's a very, I would say that's a very good test. But you made a point about John the Savage living in his tower, and then you have just these adult children just staring at this man, just in awe of just what he's doing at that point. That's how I see leftists and left-leaning people, how they view conservatives. It's almost like a different species, because they don't truly understand how we think. It's so different from how they think. It's very hard for them to actually conceptualize, other than from straw manning and from
painting a character,
very short sentences that are caricatures, and not really understanding why we value the things that we value. And even if some of them do, they completely despise it because it's antithetical to everything that they have done, and it makes them sick in a very deep way, but they'll never show it to their friends.
Right.
And that's the beginning path of the journey to the red pill.
Yeah. And this was by design. Is, when you go back and look at what Marcuse is saying, it is freedom of speech is only possible when you remove all conservatives from the space and remove their freedom of speech. That is how these people think. Is they hate us. They dehumanize us. They will never make amends for us. I'm reminded of that Sam Hyde quote, which, if we ever monetize, I probably can't say the quote here, but a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about. That is the nature of the left, is we can't ally with them. They want us dead, and they won't be happy until we're dead. And that's why I thought it was very interesting the way, when you look at the dissident right at the moment, with you may have seen something from it. There was the debate, or the podcast with Alex Jones and Sneeko, where Sneeko was calling him like a Zionist supporter for doing this, and then
but he's not.
Right, obviously.
I know Alex Jones. He's not. He never in his career said he was a Zionist. Never, not even once.
And so there's been sort of a like a decisive movement towards, we are what we are, and we won't ally with other people because there's no one we can ally with. We definitely can't ally with the Muslims. They want to destroy the West. I would say we can't ally with... and we can't... A lot of the Zionists have ulterior motives. I don't know if we can ally with them. And then obviously we can't ally with the left. It's great that people are questioning AIPAC and stuff like that, but as a lot of the voices within it have said, that doesn't mean that we can ally with the left about this issue, because they want us dead. We can't even do common enemy alliance. There is no alliance. There is us, there is the dissident right, and then there's essentially everyone else. The boomers don't care about us, the left doesn't care about us, the mainstream doesn't care about us, and that's just how it is. And I think it's good that people have been realistic enough about that.
I understand how that feels, but there are some people that we can definitely ally with. Like, some of the Zionists are very conservative people and agree with us definitely on immigration, like hand over fist. I haven't seen a Zionist that wasn't against like the massive amount of immigration. They don't like having just scores of people who don't respect your country. They don't fall for that. And there are definitely some people in Israel that we can ally with, but it's definitely like a sliver of conservatism that we can actually ally with, because Israel, even though that they take a lot of Western values, they also suffer from a few of the same problems with leftism and conservatism, which is very interesting. They copied the at least the modern Israel follows a lot of the same beats as America does, which is, that makes me very proud that they're copying us. Because we do it better.
The only problem would be with divided loyalties. Just because for any country, we would have to be suspicious of whether they're actually helping us. And that's kind of what I'm getting at is, you know, there are people who are realizing, yeah, there are some America last politicians out there. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we can make friends with the left about it. They may agree with us on that issue or agree with me on that issue, but that doesn't mean we're friends. That doesn't mean we can even work together. And that's the way it
At
should
some
be, you know,
point.
because if we act like friends, we'll get stabbed in the back. That's just the nature
Well,
of it. Is they're so good at on the left at being performatively nice. But I mean, as we talked about, that's a great indicator of psychopathy. There are a large number of people who would very quickly betray you for doing that.
so for some of the American last politicians, that's more of the neocons than from the actual Zionists, from what I've seen, and definitely from action for the past 2 decades, definitely for sure. And it's very interesting how some of the conservatives that were in the past have been caught up with not only from their past actions but from the words that from what they've said, because from their growing up and from their actual raising, they have always grown up to actually like Israel, and definitely from a very religious standpoint. And so, from religiously, they can't really give that up because of those notes in the Bible, and with Israel existing, they
Are
feel
you referring to the
attached to it at
Schofield
some point.
notes?
I wasn't really referring to the Schofield notes. I'm more specifically referring to Revelations, which is a massive topic that takes a long time to actually divulge.
Yeah, and I
But
think much of this
Revelations is the origin of that in particular, because there is particular points in Revelation where certain events have to take place, and the existence of Israel, the Jews coming back to the Holy Land, is a part of that. Um, the problem with trying to accelerate revelations is because they're trying to do God's plan without really knowing God's plan, and and people need to really just relax and have take God's plan in His own hands. Like, we don't need to do the plan for him. It's just not the right way to go about it.
I
Things are
think
going to
there's
happen because God demands it to happen, whether we want to or not. And we just really need to just calm down on that. And I think that's the right path that the neocons and people who are Zionists in a religious sense need to just understand. There is a place for people who want Israel to exist. It's just there's a point, if you want to, in our history, especially with how on the precipice we are with America, that we really need to really lock in and actually try to save America, because
yeah,
there are some serious problems that we really need to really solve.
and that's kind of
And
what the whole
Israel is in
thing
a better place
is.
than we are, and they're suffering these same problems.
Mhm.
Israel is very good at taking care of their own problems. They're very good at it, and they learned from America. And we should trust them to with their own survival. We should really trust them in doing that.
Yeah,
And we really need to lock in for our own survival, because there's people actively trying to destroy the country.
and that's the problem is you have people on both sides of the aisle destroying the West now, and we
Yeah.
we exist in the winter of our civilization, perhaps even of our people, because we have people on both sides of the aisle pushing things that are not in the interest of America.
Mhm.
Take
There are some good
H1B, for
news on that
example,
front.
which has happened even on the right.
It's more on the rich technocratic right, because a lot of those H-1B visas people, those for those workers, they usually go into the tech industry, and that's an easy transition, because the way India industrialized is very unique, as many things in India are in history.
Yeah.
They industrialize in the service industry in particular, so they already have a lot of know-how experience from that industrialization. The reason why India is so crazy and screwed up is because they didn't start with manufacturing first and then go into service. They started out with service and they're doing it backwards, trying to do industry. That's why everything is so coupled up. Is because they're doing things backwards, and with so many people that they have to actually manage, the infrastructure must be so gridlocked and so messy and outdated that it's gonna be very hard for India to actually develop properly and actually be the superpower that a lot of those Hindu nationalists want it to be. Their infrastructure holds them back substantially. Until they actually solve that, they'll never reach the superpower status that they want them to be.
Right. And I think a lot of those people are just going to come into the US and Canada. Because the thing about the H-1Bs is you come into the country and you take that job that could have gone to a middle class American, and then once you're in that position, you bring more H-1Bs in, and then you select for the people who look like you and things like that. You do a sort of nepotistic, tribalistic thing that everyone else on Earth does except the West. And
that's a problem.
As Gad said it, they don't have a lot of the left, but I mean a lot of Westerners in general don't have a cultural theory of mind for the thinking of other people. Is we're so weird in that sense that we don't understand. A lot of people don't understand that other people are tribalistic. And when you give them systems that they can easily exploit for the gain of their own people, of course they're going to screw us over. Of course they're going to look after their people first. You know, and that shouldn't be a surprise, but unfortunately it is for a lot of us.
Yeah, and I think that naivety, and also from a standpoint for us Americans, is because we imported way too many people. I'm just gonna say that because
100%.
We accepted way too many people we accepted way too many people in immigration, and that's our fault. That's a self-own. The good news is that on the right, there's going to be a lot less neocons that are actually backstabbers. There are some neocons that actually try to help and support us, like Ted Cruz and the late Lindsey Graham, God bless his soul. There are neocons that actually did and actually would try to help us, but they're being targeted, and they're also way too old. So we need new people to actually be in the process.
I'm not a big fan of Lindsey Graham either. His statements
and
on
that's
Israel
completely fine.
They speak for themselves.
And that's completely fine. But I like him because he if it comes time that Donald Trump needs support, he's there 100% of the time. Like he's there to help. He's there to push our agenda because he thinks of it as actually positive for America, which is good. And that's the thing with politics. You need to find people that are actually supportive of their cause and actually find actual patriots. For a long time, Marco Rubio used to be that neocon because he came around during that time. I think it was like 2011. He came into office. I could be wrong on that, but he was part of the neocon faction for a long time, and then he had to do a lot of soul searching and actually realize that with these problems with junk values. And the problems that America's facing simultaneously, that a lot of those values that the neocons have no longer work and no longer apply anymore. And so the neocons have to adapt and realize what is happening in front of their eyes. And some of them do.
The whole movement kind of has to go because that system was built around this rivalry with the Soviet Union, which is not anymore. It's a solution looking for a problem by this point, and so it makes new problems. And so that's the thing, is because neoconservatism is basically manipulating American patriotism into getting involved with foreign affairs, that's the thing we need to not do. is if we can focus more inwardly and start fixing some of the problems in our country, rather than sending all of our money elsewhere, then maybe we could try and fix these problems if it's even possible by this point.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. We still have because America is still far ahead that we can still solve these problems. Now, the main one is definitely the debt. We need to stamp that out quick, and that's the sort of Damocles over all of our other problems. All of our other problems are going to take 5+ years to manifest. If we allow the actual deficit to become greater than our military spending, which we're already trying to push well past $1 trillion. I'm not against that, but the problem becomes a problem when we can't tamp down the deficit or even pay off our debt. The spending needs to be cut, plain and simple. It's going to become ridiculous because if we don't get that actually paid off and tempered down and actually decrease our deficit and decrease our debt, the other problems that we're going to face would be 10 times harder to actually solve.
Yeah.
And the actual the boomer cons that Rudyard Lynch coined with that part, they're already on their way out in the Republican Party. There's not many of them left, and the ones that are left are picking sides of where to stay, but they're packed with the old blue dog Democrats back in the 90s, or to switch sides with Trump. And some of them already switched sides with Trump, like during 2016 with Ted Cruz, and that was obvious from the get go. I saw that, and Lindsey Graham, like he just likes war. he likes foreign policy. That's his thing. That's
not in a good way. Not in a Okay, there we go. We had some technical difficulties there. I was getting excited.
It's fine.
He's a little bit of a holding bloodfist. He's a little bit of, please God, just let me see war before I die. Holding bloodfist.
And it answered. It answered.
Yeah.
It answered in space.
I know.
It answered in space.
He got to see a little bit.
He got to see a little bit, and good on him.
He got to see us go to war for him. Yeah, isn't that nice?
Oh, it's, I'm not
forever worse for him.
Dude, it's great when he's for a war that you like. It's terrible for a war that you don't like. You gotta pick and choose your poison.
It's not a war as cool in the Ernest Younger based, like, living the Nietzschean example kind of way, but it's in the I want to watch other people fight my war for me kind of way. Like, it's in the, like, cowardly, like, Agamemnon kind of way.
Well, I don't know if it's that way. There's some people who are
in that war.
Dude, for leaders. I know you did.
I got drone shot at me for people like Lindsey Graham. So, just saying, like, sure, war is cool and all. But, I think war is cool with the, under the circumstance of you're doing the war yourself.
And that's the thing that, like, that's gonna be very hard to, like, actually come about because for so long, especially for our culture, that leaders, especially our leaders now, especially how dangerous it's become, they're always going to be behind the desk, and we're probably not going to return to leaders, leading the charge the same way, unless specifically that we get super soldier technology,
shielding
or armor
technology.
That we can crack
we go back
to
shielding
technology.
We end up like
going back to actual knights. Yeah, that's when it comes back. All right, and I'm waiting for those days to come because I want to be a part of that.
It is unfortunate. I'm waiting for the last time that a president was on the battlefield was the Whiskey Rebellion.
It's
George Washington was the last president to do it.
Yeah, and that's just the thing with politics. That's
rifles are just too
in its current. Yeah, with its current nature, how it is, like, like you like when like a politician's for a war you like. You don't like a politician for a war that you don't like. So I just pick and choose, your poison at that point, and that's just how politics works in general. But that's just how we're just going to have to adapt. And for all the wars that we have been involved, they're not as bad as they could have been, which is great. Except for like the Iraq War, which is completely just undone due to incompetence and bureaucracy from two administration.
Yeah.
Yeah, America plays on easy mode, but it still has its consequences due to just sheer incompetence from administrations.
Yeah, John Kiriakou talked about that quite a bit.
The sheer incompetence is why we lost those wars. It's so bad. It's so fucking bad. That's why we're getting rid of all the neocons, because politically standing it's deserved because of that incompetence.
Yeah,
it really is. But I don't really hate Lindsey Graham the same way, and that's okay. I'll be on the minority on that opinion. I just like it because he's just consistent.
So
he's just consistent on that front.
There's one elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet. We talked about forces that could destroy the entire economy. We need to talk about depopulation.
Oh, that's a huge one. That's a huge one.
I want to preface this by pointing out that Oswald Spengler was saying in 1918 that there was going to be a depopulation problem in the West. So while everyone else was talking about overpopulation, primarily the boomers, Spengler was saying over 100 years ago this is about to happen. But I want to give the floor to you on this because I know you've done a lot of research on it.
Okay, yeah. So depopulation, how it is right now, is, I wouldn't say entirely unique, but the scale is unique. Just because of how many human beings there are on the planet. The scale is what's going to be a massive shock to literally every government in existence, or non-government if you're including, Somalia or Haiti, how it is currently. There are very few developed nations that has a positive, replacement rate. Israel is one of those that has a positive replacement rate, funny enough. Probably because the Jews are just ahead of the curve on that front. But also they have plenty of enemies to fight, so they need to keep their population up anyway. That's just the benefits of just being in conflict for so long. But on the other front, for us, like in the United States, even though we're not at 2.01, which is the technical documented replacement rate that you need, or 2.1, like per child. You need to have a plenty of families that have children, 3 or more, and you need that so that you can sustain the population, not to actually grow it. And so we're still in a better place. Just as Americans, we're at 1.63, just looking at the previous statistics, but everybody else is much lower and going lower. Japan is starting to stabilize, but they're still well below replacement rates. And what's going to happen with the economy, because there's just not a lot of bodies to actually fill prior positions, a lot of businesses are going to fail, and the economy is going to contract, because there's not a lot of people either buying for one, selling, or consuming products across the globe. So there's going to be a natural contraction, which means the stock market is going to contract.
Right.
All of our consumer products are going to contract.
20-year-old
and it's going to affect everybody.
Can't work for 80-year-olds, and that's kind of the problem we're headed towards.
It's not that severe unless you're
it's
Russia
or China or South Korea. But that's kind of where it runs into problems economically. is the fact that having that few young people isn't sustainable. And so something I can add here is, I work in retail at the current moment, and what I see is the boomers are silently carrying those jobs. People aren't talking about it, but most of those jobs, the retail jobs and stuff, are retired boomers who got bored and wanted to work. When those boomers don't work anymore, and those boomers also at retail and at hardware stores and things like that, the entire clientele is boomers. When those people aren't working the jobs and they're not buying things anymore, I'm not sure what's next, because it's not sustainably enough pay for Gen Z to stay in for an extended period of time. No one can really afford to work those jobs except the boomers. And no one can afford to buy the things they're selling except the boomers. And that's where I can see a really serious economic problem there is when that demand crashes.
It's not going to crash, but it's going to contract. It's not really going to really crash, but it's going to fundamentally shrink because there's just not enough people. But the thing with America is that we still have plenty. It's going to affect us, long term. But long term, we're going to get some benefits from that for at least for Americans, as long as we inculcate good values and actually start to raise our children. Gen Z is going to eventually is going to benefit from a higher paying job, because because companies need to stay in and need to stay alive. Eventually they will pay higher wages, but you're also going to have to realize that you're going to have to pay higher prices at the same time. But eventually, by just the sheer amount of people involved in the economy, they'll eventually try to figure out an equilibrium where the most amount of people are going to be satisfied with it. Right now, we're in a stage of imbalance. We're in a transition phase.
And
that's why things are so weird and so chaotic.
Probably going to get worse as the boomers get older and as they figure out the new equilibrium.
For most part, yeah, but America is so innovative and adaptive.
That is true. Yeah.
It's so there's many ways it can go, but I think we're going to be in a soft crash as long as we don't suffer a debt crisis, and particularly a debt crisis. If we hit a debt crisis, then it's all bets are off. The economy crashes. Yeah. But as long as we don't have a debt crisis, we can weather the storm pretty well. Because eventually, it's when jobs start to pay more, because eventually we'll find the equilibrium where we'll find enough wages, or have the wages enough to actually pay people in a quote-unquote living wage that everybody likes to throw that around. But also in a smaller sense, other than the overarching looming debt crisis, which scares me till this day. If we defeat the socialists and defeat the socialism that is in blue states, the economy is going to improve substantially, and prices would actually start to find a better equilibrium that people will actually be willing to actually live and pay those prices. Well, actually cheaper prices, because there's too much government involvement in our not only housing but also our Medicare that makes it damn near impossible to pay for either of those. And so we should get rid of those programs, because they obviously have failed us.
Everyone should just move out of the blue states, quarantine them, give them 2 weeks to flatten the curve, see how they like it.
As one way to look at it. I think a better solution is just to replace them with Republicans, especially today's Republicans that are coming out of the woodworks. A lot of them are either younger millennials and eventually Gen Z Republican politicians are going to come in. So you're going to get a good cropping
Brandon Herrera
of politicians, like Brandon Herrera, yes, that who see the problems and our mistakes that are made, are willing to actually solve those problems.
He might change history if he's able to defeat New World Screwworm. That would be wild. Because that
will actually.
So I don't know if you're in on that, but they like his district has the factories that were used to defeat it the last time. He would have the ability to reopen those factories and alter the course of history by defeating it again.
Well, the benefits of that. So there's some tailwinds that he doesn't have, direct control, but he's absolutely should take advantage of. Is that Texas is one of the most business-friendly states in the country, and he will absolutely be able to do that. Just because of how business-friendly Texas is, because Texas is softening off companies from blue states such as New York, California, Washington, maybe even Illinois as well. I know for our state, we're not getting that because we have a Democratic governor, but just because of our...
all of it in Idaho. Everything from Washington comes to Idaho.
Yeah. It's just for our state, our reputation for right now has been mining and manufacturing.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of service companies, and the ones that we do are all in Tempe. And that should definitely change. And Tucson has been neglected for so long as well, because it's been Democratic. I would say it's because of Democrats running it for decades. It's just run it to the ground. But once we get better politicians in, because a lot of the neocons have had a vice grip on politics here in Arizona, and eventually that will change.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And we'll actually get better businesses. Like, breweries now are starting to have, hopefully from my state, has an actual cultural renaissance. Yeah. Where we actually get businesses that are actually built by people from and born in Arizona, and so I'm hoping for that future.
Yeah, and with that, I really want to get towards what the individual can do in light of these circumstances. What someone in Gen Z can do to handle these problems. We talked about the a lot of these pressures that are on our generation. I think that first and foremost, one of the greatest things you can do is hobby maxing. Gen Z men especially should be hobby maxing. Is you should be looking at the things you like doing, move towards the things that give you life and do them. Especially men, because we like to hyperfixate on things. You should fixate on the things you like, whether that's homebrewing. You should probably do some particularly more masculine hobbies like shooting and things like that. I think that a lot of that is there. And the problem, too, we're facing, and part of the loneliness problem, is that every space that wasn't inherently right-wing became left-wing. They infiltrated every little community. They infiltrated Reddit. They infiltrated everything. And so it's really hard to enjoy a lot of hobbies now. And so I think maybe the way you have to go about it is either do solo hobbies or do specifically more right-wing oriented hobbies.
Or just make your own space and kick the leftists out. That's literally just... That is especially those... Yeah, especially those subverters that are like it. There's some left-wing individuals that are like cool, but it's a process, and you have to be careful with.
It's not worth it to deal with them. And
it's not at this point in America.
And like I was a hardcore Warhammer fan in high school and pre-2020. And then they started telling us that if we didn't support George Floyd, you will not be missed. And it's just, I can't find myself enjoying the hobby anymore. I have to do other things now. because they just
Well, Games Workshop is hated, for a
and
whole bunch of reasons.
that's
But
part
yeah,
of the
that's
problem.
well deserved.
Mhm.
Because they're a terrible company.
Yeah,
Quite
and it
honestly.
should, like, people talk about it on the micro level, but on the macro level, it should be discussed. The fact that the left has taken over these spaces and they've fucking destroyed our hobbies. And that kind
Hmm.
of sucks. That it kind of sucks that we can't just enjoy things anymore. Men can't just enjoy things. But you should move towards the hobbies that you can still enjoy. They're still out there.
Hmm.
Like, for example, it could be dependent on your location, but I went to a Renaissance fair last year, and
Hmm.
it wasn't full of men in dresses. It wasn't like it, it it wasn't too bad. It wasn't
Okay.
like shoving pride flags down your throat. There are a couple
Thank
hobbies that
goodness.
are manageable. And then there are some hobbies that are protected. But just definitely, you should you should do things like that. You should make your mind a place you want to be in. If your mind is full of all the negative things all the time and the mistakes you made and everything else, you're not going to want to be there. But if you can commit your brain to things that you enjoy,
Hmm.
whether that be writing or some other creative work, or it's home brewing, or it's shooting, or Renaissance fairs or whatever else, those things will make you want to live inside your mind sometimes, and that's a good thing. Um,
Yeah, just create your own spaces.
yeah,
If those spaces been taken over by the left, just create an assembly of that space. Just the same thing, just for right wingers.
yeah,
That's just what we're just gonna have to do because the the minds of just left wingers and right wingers are just not at this point. They're diverged so much that they're
we
just
live in
not
different
really
worlds.
compatible.
Yeah, and
Completely different worlds, and
but the
that's the sad thing about it. But that's what you're gonna just have to do.
and you have
Hobby
to,
maxing is a
because
very good one.
yeah, the connection is the second thing there. The connection is essential.
Hmm.
We're social animals as much as psychology tried to deny it for about 40 years. We are social animals. And when you are not part of a tribe, your brain assumes you're about to die. It goes into survival mode. It can't stop panicking. It can't stop being on alert because we're not meant to exist on our own. Now, there is something worth mentioning there with the Faustian spirit. The thing that is Western, that is Germanic, is a desire to be alone. And yes, there's an aspect of that. I think that's kind of what's biting us in the ass right now, is because there's an aspect of so many of us that enjoys that solitude sometimes. I think we've taken it too
Hmm.
far. We've taken it too far with the phones and the lack of talking to people and things like that. And I think it just has to be done in a healthier way. Go for a hike instead. Go be alone with
Yeah,
the infinite. Go for a nice hike alone and just enjoy that. But then come back and
yeah,
connect, because you need to connect or else you're going to go insane. But and
yeah,
it's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's also not. We're
yeah.
meant to be social.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a there's things to be said on that particular why we like to be alone or more people want to be alone is because we're more forced to because of just how toxic everything became. I blame
That
the
was a
left on that
factor, but
part.
I think also there's a part of us that wants to look at the Indians and look at the Chinese. Look at them cramming themselves into rooms and onto subways. You don't see Westerners do that. We've never done that
Hmm.
because we our like origin story is the steppes. Originally,
Hmm.
that is where we're coming from, is incredibly wide open spaces. And something about that exists in our spirit still to this day. And we like
Hmm.
that solitude. We like to be alone a little bit. Especially, the higher caste individuals, the ones that have the more
Hmm.
active mind and all of that. You need that alone time to make sense of your thoughts, and that's a good thing. And you should do some amount of it, but in a healthy way and in the right amount. Um, But then, yeah, as stated, come back and connect because you need it.
Yeah, I always say that's a good way to actually look at life as well, making meaningful connections.
Yeah.
Hobby maxing is definitely one way to do it. I had to get rid of some bad habits so I can actually go and actually enjoy and do things that I actually want to, such as this podcast or reading. Get back into that, or do something else that I probably want to enjoy. But I'm not, as you can see from this wall, I'm not exactly swimming in money right now.
Yeah.
But eventually, yeah. But eventually, I do want to get into other hobbies once I feel comfortable in finances.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also having a sense of meaning is going to take you a long way too. And the harsh
Absolutely.
reality of Gen Z is we can't always follow our dreams. We can't always have that dream job that gives us that ultimate sense of meaning. So don't be dependent on your job. Develop that sense of meaning within. And then that like I said, making your brain a place that you're happy to exist within. If your mind can be a somewhat comfortable place, and while I'm not a diehard Stoic, the Stoics do talk about this, of having the idea of retreat to a countryside inside your mind. That was either I want to say that was Seneca, maybe Marcus Aurelius, one of the two. But anyways, if you can make the inside of your mind a comfortable place by having a sense of meaning and a hierarchy, like being an aristocrat of the soul, in a way to where the modern world can trample you down the way it does and it doesn't crush your spirit. I think that sort of thing is very important. To where you have sort of a psychological backstop of no matter how hard things get, I am still an aristocrat of the soul. No matter how hard things get, it was there for a reason and I have a meaning for this existence.
Yeah. You just gotta find that sense and place of meaning, and then you're able to endure a lot more hardship. And there is plenty of hardship for Gen Z and definitely Gen Alpha that are growing up as well. And then the generation after that, which was it Gen Bravo, or that we're just going to call it. And if we're following, Zeta, which is going to be us, and then we have Alpha that's after us. It's going to be Bravo after that one. Weird generation connections there, but that's what's likely going to happen. We're just going to have a lot of hardship, especially with the inevitable economy contracting, just because there's just not going to be enough population.
I think that hardship, though, is going to make up for some of the arrested development we had. I think can be resolved by that said hardship. Let us not forget it was Nietzsche who said, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger," and it is true. Yeah. That conflict does make you better. And as Junger said, war is the father of all men, but it's also the hammer and anvil.
Yeah.
We're facing challenges that the boomers don't. And so there's this odd situation where we're wiser than them in some ways because we face challenges they never had to face. And there's this weird oxymoronic thing in which the young are wiser than the old, and we don't know what to do with that psychologically. But I think there is something to that. We'll find wisdom in this hardship, and that will give us the strength to endure, I believe.
I think it's from the books we read.
Yeah, that's part of it. Well, we read the books because we've been pushed to, because something made us wake up, whether it was COVID or as people going insane in 2016 or whatever else it might have been. Like we're here for a reason. Many of us wanted to be left alone and suddenly realized we couldn't be left alone anymore.
Yeah, and Gen Z, especially with like some of the hard things that affect the soul the most. Just like how with the rise of the internet, there's just been a huge rise in lust in the population. Just like with pornographic materials, if I can even say that.
I think you can say that.
Yeah,
but yeah,
the generation in particular had to find a way, either by themselves or with other people helping, to actually get out of that rut and that life, and it's very hard. And once you actually achieve that, you should be proud of that, and no person should bully you and get you down on getting out of the gooning lifestyle, as some people would say. It's good. It's a good thing, and you're stronger for it. So I just want to give that out to Gen Z, or whoever a part of the generation that wants to and willing to get out of that addiction, because that's what it really is, and it really destroys the mind. And you should fill it in with, like we were saying, hobby maxing. Fill it in with other good stuff that actually gives you meaning and actually makes you happy to be alive.
And that's the thing, is it's one of those addictions that they didn't tell us was an addiction. So I compare it to, like, if you look at the way that they sold like orange juice, but it was just fucking soda with extra steps, like the Sunny D and the Capri Sun and all that. It had just as much sugar as soda, and we're just giving it to kids like it's a healthy thing, like you're healthy for drinking it because it'll give you vitamin D, supposedly. And
not enough.
Like, it was just given out so haphazardly. But I don't know. It's hard to decide if that's stupidity or malevolence. I would say that anyone who's telling you keep gooning, they are actually forces of subversion trying to make you weak. I assume they're acting in bad faith by this point.
Yeah, and if there's a bunch of people who come at you on your internet and try to shame you for doing that, or your past life from being in that rut and being a gooner and have actually triumphed and got yourself out of that, just ignore them. You don't need their praise whatsoever. Right? You already conquered something that's already hard.
The will to equality or crabs in the bucket mentality. Think of it that way. It is the hatred of greatness. It is seeing someone ascend beyond you and wanting to drag them back down because it makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, and now it goes the same fate with those who are, a part of the porn industry.
Yeah.
They just need to find a way to just get out of that, man. They really do. They'll be better off for it. They'll be much happier people, and they'll look, significantly less, drained.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's everybody and all parties are better off for it, except for, the ones who are really making the big bucks on it, of course.
Yeah.
They're not going to be happy. Obviously.
All
right. We covered pretty much everything for our topics for today.
I think we've covered everything we can reasonably get to today.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that'll about do it for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely we'll probably have another episode, sooner or later. How we're going to do it.
We talked about immigration and suicidal empathy was probably what we're going to next.
Yeah, that should come up hopefully sooner rather than later. Alrighty, well, that's it, everybody.
Yeah, I guess that's it. All right, well, we'll see you guys in the next one.